This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spira, our guest today, the lovely and wonderful Dr. Nicole Vane, and really enjoyable Karyn Ross. She is a consultant, and she is very bright and very intelligent, and she has her own consulting business. She's written 7 books. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she's really, really down to earth, easygoing person to talk to, and puts things in real simple terms. And she's gonna, and the three of us, we're gonna talk about building and creating and sustaining your dream team. And sounds simple on the surface, but dive a little deeper and really, really unique perspective. I think you're gonna enjoy this conversation. A lot of pearls in it, and I walk away with a bunch myself. For example, it's not unkind to hold people to a standard. I absolutely love that one. I'm going to probably print that on my forehead. As always, the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast brought to you by Kettenbach Dental. They're excited to announce first major advancement in fluoride varnish treatments called Profacil. It is a new treatment delivered by a mucoadhesive dimethicone gel. No more gritty, grimy feeling. It's a smooth and silky feel on your teeth. No more grit. So contact Kettenbach today for this and more products, as they have a whole line and a whole wealth of products. And they have a great, great Salesforce team. And they have people helping people. Contact them, 877-532-2123. Again, 532-2123. If you like the podcast, click like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Watch it on YouTube, as we have the video version now being produced by our friends in our Rogue Media Company. And if you don't like it, well, please tell me. I really appreciate that. And shows like this are created from feedback from some of our great guests. So hit me up, sonnyspira@gmail.com or 607-624-2962. Relax, folks, and enjoy the show. Take care.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast, and these are our stories.
Hello, welcome everybody to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Dr. Sonny Spira. Today we have 2 guests. One I'm sure you know fairly well, Dr. Nicole Vane, who has a private practice in San Diego and is a great, great friend and contributor to the program. She has so many thoughts and ideas. I probably wouldn't be able to do this job if I didn't have Nicole on my team. And, great suggestions, and she always comes through. So we talked but hey, why don't we work with someone that's in the coaching field, and let's talk about some of the dynamics and things in dentistry. And that's our goal today. So first of all, hello, Nicole. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thank you.
We're recording this on Father's Day, so we're gonna move this right along, and in respect for the 2 gentlemen involved. So we're gonna move things quickly, but we're gonna make sure we cover things well. Our guest is Karyn Ross, and she's from Karyn Ross Consulting. Let me give you a little background. Karyn is on a mission to help people improve the world. Internationally acclaimed consultant, coach, speaker, and award-winning author. She helps leaders and organizations create ways to serve their customers that are effective, efficient, and that turn vision and values into reality. Those are some things we're going to talk about today. Karyn's methods are practical, easy to learn and apply, and are especially effective in the service processes. Working in a wide variety of sectors, she helps organizations and the people in helping them flourish, thrive, and grow. Karyn teaches leaders to lead in ways that eliminate fear and create trust. That should sound pretty familiar, folks. Karyn always says, hey, how we get there is just as, if not more important than where we are going. Good. I like that one. Karyn is the author of 7 books: The Kind Leader, a practical guide to eliminating fear, creating trust, and leading with kindness; How to Coach for Creativity and Service Excellence, a lean coaching workbook; The Toyota Way to Service Excellence, lean transformation and service organizations; Think kindly, speak kindly, act kindly. Wouldn't that be nice? 366 easy and free ideas you can use to create a kinder world. Starting today, and Big Karma and Little Cosmo. Welcome, New Cat Zenny. All of her funds go to her global nonprofit, the Love and Kindness Project Foundation. When not traveling, Karyn loves spending time making art and designing and sewing her own clothes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see a little bit of what Karyn's all about. If you're listening, I'm sure you're going to get the vibe pretty quickly. Follow her on LinkedIn for daily inspirational posts. My kind of gal. I do that all the time on Facebook. And kindness and continuous improvement. So Karyn, welcome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here. And happy Father's Day, Dr. Sunny.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So we're going to start out we're going to get a little bit of your background, Karyn, if you don't mind. But the topic of our conversation is going to be creating and sustaining your dream team. And I think, to me, the key words are sustaining and your dream team. So Dr. Nicole, your dream team is not my dream team, and vice versa, right?
Yes, correct.
So before we get into it, Karyn, just give me a little bit of how you got into this wonderful world that you're in.
Sure. And thanks for asking. Actually, I have a master's degree in sculpture from many years ago. So I'm actually an artist and I love to write. And people always say to me, but you're a business consultant and a coach, and you help leaders create, fabulous teams and turn their vision into reality in service organizations. Wasn't it a waste of time studying art? And I always tell them, no, it wasn't, because actually as an artist, you learn 2 really important things. You learn how to solve any kind of problem, because if you want to get a sculpture to balance and stand, you got to figure out how to do it. And you also learn how to turn a vision into a reality. So after I went to art school, it's true, right? It doesn't matter.
Yes, yeah.
The painting or the vision you have as an owner for your dental practice, what you want it to be. And Dr. Sunny, you said something really important. It's different for everybody. It's different from you. For you, it's different for Dr. Nicole. It's different for everybody. And so my job, I learned how to help people do that in the way that actually Toyota uses to effectively and efficiently make cars and actually respect and create fabulous teams and teamwork, because nothing gets done without people doing it. That's simply it, right?
I got to ask you, because it begs, to me, it nails a part of the question that I'm going to put in my own 2 cents on this part here. I think not enough doctors think or really spend time on themselves and their true vision. Right?
Yes.
I don't know that they sculpt it like you just described perfectly, right? In simple terms. I don't think enough people spend time on that, because that's the uncomfortable part, right? That's the part where you have to say no to certain things. Like, you can't be all things to all people.
Going out of network can be really scary, but staying in network can be even scarier and riskier too, long term. Insurance reimbursements aren't even keeping pace with inflation, which can really affect the quality of your work, not to mention the quality of your life. I'm Allison Bernstein.
I'm Dr. Josh Bernstein. We went out of network over 20 years ago, and we can show you what worked, what didn't, and how you can do it with minimal risk.
ThriveOutOfNetwork.com teaches you everything you need to know, including the most important part, which is getting your team on board. It teaches them how to communicate with patients and getting them comfortable with the entire process.
Go to ThriveOutOfNetwork.com and check it out today. That's ThriveOutOfNetwork.com.
what is your most important? What are your values? What are your core values? What are those things that are like deal breakers for you, or that you don't want coming out of your house, your office, your mouth, your team?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe I'm jumping to it, but Karyn, I mean, is that something that...
No, you're entirely right. And of course, when a lot of people, come to me because they're having problems with their team. Their team isn't doing the things that they want them to do. They're not being accountable, or they're acting in ways that aren't the way that, you as the owner, the leader, wants them to act. And the first thing I'm always going to say, okay, what's your mission, vision, and values? Because that's what's going to pull every single thing through, right? So, and Dr. Nicole, what was the first thing that I asked you?
S is what my mission statement was.
Exactly.
How many mission statements have you had, Nicole?
Oh gosh. I think I've always had one, but where Karyn helped me was consolidating it into one sentence that can be understood, through a team. Because what she said to me was, wow, this is lovely. She said it very nice, but this sounds like your voice, but not something that someone else could repeat back and have it be in their voice that they understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that's been my biggest struggle as this high level visionary swirling person, where I'm not simple. There are other people that are simple, but I have all these ideas and I want to be a super GP and I want to do all these things. And that's really hard as a leader to matriculate through a team. Someone can go up the street and work for someone that just does single unit crowns and simple fillings. It's a lot easier to understand their practice versus someone like mine and what really drives me and my vision.
Right.
So,
go ahead, Karyn.
So what I'm going to say, Nicole, you're 1,000,000% correct, right? So we need to think of it as broken telephone. So the hardest thing for anybody, especially as the leader, the owner, is to be clear, crystal clear. What is it you're doing here? And again, how you're going to do it. That's the values, because values have to turn into behaviors. So if you're not crystal clear, and then you go down to the next level, managers or office managers, depending on how big your practice is, and they're interpreting it as one thing, may not be exactly what you're thinking. Then we go down to the team level. And then now that's, again, people are interpreting or misinterpreting as they understand things. So unless you as the owner leader are crystal clear, and as I always tell people, I just have one statement, mission, vision altogether, should be less than 10 words long. And think about it. I know I'm old enough to remember when I had to remember my own telephone number. Our fabulous devices didn't just remember for us. The reason nothing is longer than 10 digits is that we as humans don't remember that. So if your mission or vision statement is longer than that, no one's going to remember. So for me, what's the first thing that was in my bio? My mission is to help people improve the world. 5 words. I am clear. Anybody else is clear, right?
Right. So Nicole, talk a little bit about that then for yourself. And I think it sounds to me like if you get the heart of the matter, right, then the other periphery things will always refer back to the heart. Like I find with our core values, I always go back to them, and every single communication kind of thing is go back to this. Is this really who we are? So what did you find? What was your, as you distilled it down for yourself, what was the epiphany for you there?
Well, for me, it was just trying to make it concise. Like for me, it's establishing the oral relationship between systemic health issues that's individualized for my patients. So I really, being more holistic, I really want people to understand how their mouth can affect their body. That's my backbone mission statement. But my highest level value for for part of my culture is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So what does integrity mean?
One of my 7.
Integrity that involves a lot of sub layers. We wrote those out, like honesty and being able to communicate to each other about, one, if we're made to feel uncomfortable, but also 2, integrity in holding yourself accountable is where I've really struggled in my practice. Not with me just personally, but more the team members. Again, we talked about people frequently calling out. You're letting down your entire team on that shift. And that to me isn't in high integrity. And
it's funny you said that. I saw something that said, and it was a question, and it says, how does a solo practitioner handle a sick day? Right. And then the responses were, well, if you're a solo practitioner, you don't have sick days. And
it's true.
I sort of chuckled because I was like, well, 35 years, I've only missed one day, and it was because I hurt my back and I couldn't get out of bed, but I've hurt my back before and I've gotten there. And so I'm like, well, 35, I wish I didn't have that one, but you do, you get there, and it's like, why? Well, because you sort of have to, but maybe it's not the same feeling for team members.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
Right.
You almost make it easy for them sometimes. Well, we'll cover. You have some empathy and compassion. Well, I understand your child's sick. We'll cover it. But it's like, these are things that you kind of have to deal with in order to satisfy what we expect here,
Right.
So
right.
Karyn,
and today has a lot. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say today has a lot more challenges too with inflation. Them wanting to, like, for me, people can't afford to live in my area. So they have to drive far. So I have to be able to incentivize them with money and culture to make it worth them driving far and sitting in their car, and make it like sexy position of like, ooh, it's going to have this title and you're going to be able to learn these cool things. Like, there's so many layers now to hiring that make things additional challenges besides just your culture, like what's going to bring them into work. It's no longer like, oh, this is the practice in my small town and we all just work there and go to church together and it's easy peasy. At least that's not the world I live in.
Well, the sexify thing, that's new to me. So Karyn, hop in here and help me out. Go ahead.
Sure. But this totally actually ties to actually the second point I wanted to talk about, and with what you're saying, Dr. Sunny. So we have values, right? So you have your mission, what you're about, and then those values. And values, so when you say the word integrity, or you say the word respect, or you say all of those, patience, all of those things, they actually mean different things to different people, because people come to you from all different backgrounds and all different experience. And we tend as human beings to assume that the way we think about something is the way other people think about something. So often what's missing is we have mission, vision, values, but we don't tell people the specific behaviors that we expect them to use that show those values. And we don't tell them the specific behaviors that don't go with those values, right? So an example for integrity is that if someone's going to be away, they follow the standards that are set out in the employee handbook. You call in a certain amount of time before, etc. Right? You let people know if you're going to go on vacation, you hand in your paper vacation form 2 weeks before, or whatever. If you use, an online HR provider, you do those things. But we don't tell people that actually we don't connect the dots for them, that this is what integrity looks like. This is the behavior integrity looks like. And if we don't tell them that, actually, again, we've missed a part of the system. And also, and I'm going to tie this back to hiring, if we know what behaviors, we need to know what behaviors we're looking for and what behaviors we're not looking for. When we hire people, into that hiring process, we need to build tests.
We need to build what? What did you say?
I call it a test.
Test. Okay, that's what I thought you said. I wanted to make sure you didn't say text, because I'm like, that's the last thing I want is a text message. But go.
A test
Yeah.
for those behaviors, right? So whether you do a phone interview first, when people come for a working interview, you want to actually see what they do when you give them a test for that behavior. So it's very important for Dr. Nicole that her team aren't afraid to ask her a question or say that they don't understand something. So during the working interview, it would be really important for her to be checking off, oh, is the person asking any questions? Well, they're watching something, because even though, they may come from a different practice and there might be things that are similar, they're not going to be exactly the same. So if someone asked no questions during that time, and then Nicole, you said to the person, what questions do you have in that open-ended questions, and they didn't have any, I can guarantee you that's not the behavior you want, because what you see is what you're going to get. So the person might have good skills as an assistant, but actually, if we bring someone in who isn't going to be the right fit, and then we're going to have a problem with the values. And most things that really cause cultural problems and that cause problems in maintaining team actually are the problems where values are controverted, right? We can teach people many skills. We can send them to classes. We can do things. It's much harder to change someone's values. So we need a good hiring process that has built-in tests. We are testing that. We are seeing with our own eyes. We are hearing it with our own ears. So one of the things I often help people with is to create that interview and hiring process after people have solidified their vision and their values and what do those behaviors look like. Now in the interview process, how do we find the right candidate? And I know in the dental world, it is not easy to find candidates, and now we're looking for the right candidate, but it's a lot easier to bring in the right person than it is to go through 90 days, find that they're not the right fit, start again.
Yes.
Okay. So let's take that a couple steps further, right? So you very clearly said hiring process that tests most importantly for their values, correct?
Exactly.
Right? So you want to understand their values. So if your core values say, and you have integrity, and you have other values that you hold near and dear to yourself, like you treat people with respect, use that word. We have in there, like, our team is our family, right? Like, how do you treat your family? That could be a huge answer, right? That can be a lot of roads you run down there, but that's kind of something. So let's go a little further with that, if you don't mind. What are some other examples along that road? Now, you had said that when Dr. Nicole's interviewing someone, she's or they're doing something, she's paying attention to, are they asking questions? So that's one thing, right? What are some other things that you see maybe that are just chronically missed by dental or health professionals when they're looking for certain traits or values? Values.
Okay, so a lot of times one of the problems I hear about and I see about is that people come, they're not even willing to follow a dress code. They're not willing to put on a name tag. They're not willing to do those things, those simple things that show actually that they care, because work is a privilege. When you come to work for someone, it's a privilege to work in their office. So I want to be looking at when the person, some of these are just like plain old-fashioned things. When the person comes for the interview, are they dressed in a way that I would expect that would go with the style of the office? If they're not, and that is important to you and it's important for your patients, I would think about that. Really, because
yes, I agree.
that is now going to be a problem. If you are looking for someone, if patience, actually, I have a client who one of their values is patience. And they're patient with their patients, right? Their patients are human beings. Their patients have all kinds, they're not feeling well. In general, they're coming to a dentist because something is wrong. How do we have patience? How do we have kindness? So when you have the working interview, you can ask, tell me about a time when you were working with a patient and it required a lot of patience. And I always ask people to use open-ended questions, questions that can't be answered with a yes or a no, right? That someone has, right.
But you also asked a pretty broad question, which gives them a lot of leeway, as opposed to creating a scenario that you think demonstrates patience, and they may not interpret that, right? And they're nervous and they don't answer. I like the fact that you've got a lot more runway in that question.
Yes. Then when they come for the working interview, and again, this goes back to you as the leader. You have to describe for yourself what values, what behaviors show patience. Does the person not interrupt someone else when they're talking? That's a behavior that can show patience. Someone who's willing to listen. Does patience mean as they're standing at the chair, they're making eye contact with the patient, they're nodding, even if the patient seems to be going on and you're just like, oh my goodness, how could this patient be telling us 12,000 different things, right? So you need to know yourself as the leader, as the owner. Again, what am I looking for? Because if we only test for dental skills, and I'm not saying we shouldn't test for dental skills. We need to know they have the skill. But if they are impatient, and if after 3 seconds someone's talking and the person brusquely says, okay, that's great, blah, 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 and walks away, it's a lot harder to teach someone patience than it is to coach them through an upgrade of the dental skills. No one is going to come to you with 100% of the actions and values that you have. But I guarantee you, if you hire someone who has 80% of the values and behaviors that you are looking for, the 20% will either improve through training and coaching and models from other people in the practice. If you hire someone who only has 20% of the behaviors you want that are in alignment with your values, 80%, you're not going to fix, you're not going to change 80% of a person. We can create conditions that make people want to be better and do better. But
Nicole, go ahead.
The person who can change is themselves. People change themselves. We can't change people.
Yeah, but that's been my struggle. As I brought to you, Dr. Spira, the analogy of Kobe and Michael Jordan. Not that I'm the GOAT myself, but that my standards are that high. Like throughout their entire career, they were the first to practice. They were always still watching videotapes of themselves. They were reviewing everything with the team about how they could be better and be winners. And that's kind of my driving culture. And it's difficult to surround yourself with people when that's part of my value is to work hard and try and deliver a great product. When some people just want to show up and be thanked for showing up.
Okay, so let me take that example, right? So I'm going to make an assumption that one of the important values that Dr. Nicole values is industriousness, right? Put their nose to the grindstone, seek that high level of results, but not compromising. What would be some things that would be part of the questions or the hiring questions for that, looking for that behavior and value?
I would ask the question, what are you most proud of? Again, it's a question that has a wide runway.
Yeah, huge. Yep.
I If somebody says, I was a single mom at 16 years old. I put myself through assisting school. My child now goes to school as the honor roll, is this and that. Guess what? Nicole, that's a match.
Mm.
If somebody, they can tell you something in their personal life, they can tell you something, from their dental practice. Oh, I actually reorganized the way we order supplied. I, fixed the whole tagging system. I did this all without being asked. Again, that's a match. If the person says, I don't know, I'm not really proud of anything, red flag. Red flag.
Yeah. I think you might want to run. I think you might want to close the door and say, I'm sorry, we're closed today.
Exactly. Exactly. So again, everything ties together. There's a system and process from time that everything ties together. Your vision, your values, what behavior are you looking for? How do we actually, and I've had people who be like, I don't know how to test for this. I'm like, okay, well, let's just sit down and think for a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, I can see that. I can see that because it's not cookie cutter.
It's not cookie cutter.
Right? But I mean, fair to say, right? Just in listening to Nicole, and I've known Nicole for a long time, and we have a very good friendship. But hearing that, I was like, okay. And then I'm trying to think to myself, okay, what am I looking for now? What would I want to, because of course, you're dentist, right? You're figuring out, okay, there's the problem. How's your solution? And, you're kind of putting all the pieces. So it was just interesting. And I could imagine in your world, especially in different consultant, a lot of times one of the negatives I hear is a consultant will come in and like, here's our template. And that may not be anything.
I have no cookie cutter solution for
Right?
anything.
Yeah.
Every single thing I do is tailored specifically because my job as a coach and a consultant is to help you turn your vision into reality. Every single person's vision is different.
Right.
But my success is you turning your vision into a reality, because every single person is here on earth with a purpose. And if you, Dr. Sunny, don't turn your vision into a reality, and you, Dr. Nicole, don't turn your vision into a reality, the problem is there are patients who are going to be missing what they need, right?
Mhm.
That is the kind of
Yes.
part. It's about someone else. So we need diversity. We need difference because your patients need different things. So I have no cookie. I have a process that I
Yeah.
use to help
Yeah.
people. I have a set of steps, and we go through that set of steps. But every relationship I have with clients is different. One of the things I would do is sit down and help you figure out what are the questions we need to ask. What does the interview process need to look like? That you bring the right person.
What do you do with that young dentist, that young owner, and that new owner? I don't want to say young. I don't want to make it age, but let's say new owner, new to the ownership world, who doesn't know, they don't have their values. They're not really sure. They know that they've read that, oh, you're successful, so it must be this, and now they've come up with this amalgam of what they think it might be, but they really haven't, I don't think, done that introspection like I talked about earlier. Like,
Right.
how do you approach that?
So this is always the most difficult part of and of course it's the beginning of every engagement. And I use engagement like actually getting married. When we're engaged, it's because we love each other, right? And we want to help each other. So at the beginning, I really get to know the person and I listen to them and I help them to write about what in 5 years. Can you write me a story about where you see yourself? Can you draw me a picture of what's important to you? I'm an artist. Oftentimes I ask people to draw. Actually, didn't I ask you, do you like to draw? Nicole, didn't I ask? So oftentimes I ask people to draw. And in doing those things, they figure them out. Also, sometimes a young person doesn't get it right at the beginning. That's okay. We go with what they have, and it changes over time. I certainly Yeah, I'm not the same person, and though I do have the same core values as I was when I was in my 20s, now. But that's okay. We learn and grow, and practices learn and grow. And as owners learn and grow and blossom, actually the direction for their practice might change, right? Maybe first you started, you think, oh, I just want one office in my hometown. Over time, you might think, oh no, actually I have a vision for, lots of offices in different places. And I started out doing one kind of practice. Many people I know started out in traditional dentistry and now they're in the biologic holistic dentistry. They changed from what they learned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got to help them.
Well, for me, though, I think what's a challenge, not just for me, sorry. The reason I wanted to bring Karyn on is we are all challenged in this fee-for-service scope with hiring with people where their mission and values and everything is driven around what insurance will cover. So when we're attracting those type of employees where it's, well, yeah, I'm going to treatment plan just $1,000 a year in general, even if the patient doesn't really need it, or I'll just say they need a root canal because if it's deep, they're not going to cover a pulp cap. I might as well just get it done. Then it's also more profitable because then I can do a root canal build up in a crown instead of just one big filling because I get paid crap from Schmelta Dental, whatever. I think that the hardest part is that there are so many team members that their whole basis in dentistry has been trained around a value system that is, we take your insurance, we will bill your insurance, we will maximize your insurance. And there's absolutely zero personal vision, culture that comes from the quality of care they want to provide for those patients. And it could be very specific, like Danica Brennan, who is biomimetic, or someone else who specializes in just cosmetics, or someone else who's like me, who's like biologic and both, or someone who just wants to do an all-on-4 practice. Like there's none of those fit within the traditional just we take your insurance bread and butter model. And I think that's really hard to build a team that really wants and respects those values and also wants to train into it. There's a lot more training as doctors that's involved, and it's a lot more for the team. Like even I getting my IB certification, it's a lot of new equipment, a lot of monitoring, a lot of training for team. There's all these different things that we can add to our practice that are for the patient benefit, but it still is going to impact the team in terms of their training. And it's hard to have people that really have that hunger. Usually most are incentivized by, oh, well, can I make more? Versus wow, this feels really good to do more elite things or to give this quality of care to our patients. So how do you navigate that? Like literally hiring someone who all they know is that I'm good at billing and I answer the phones,
right.
But
so
not.
Again, back to what we're testing for, right? So I would do my best to find out what interests that person has in your case, Dr. Nicole, alternative health things, right? What we might call alternative health. I would also look for some of the people perhaps just out of assisting school, just out of school, who are younger and aren't so set in their ways. And yes, again, you might have to spend more time training them in the dental portion, but you're going to put that time to train them, and you can actually get someone started off in the right way, right? So I would look for those people, and that way, one of the things that I found in many dental practices is that people who have had a less strong connection between their values and value-driven behaviors and hiring to start with, and have longtime team members and now have decided, okay, actually, I want to make a difference and I want to make a change. That often it's the longer time team members who kind of lived under the old system have a problem making that change because they started off in one way. We hired them because they were good in that one way. And now we're saying, but we want you to be somebody or something different, and they may not be able to do that, right? And as I always tell Dr. Nicole, training isn't a be-all, end-all for everything. And lack of training or training didn't work is not always the root cause of someone not doing what we expect them to do or what we want them to do. So I have a very specific approach to actually training people in the first place of how we do it. Okay. After that one training, I would expect that some people, we all learn differently. If there's gaps and they're not doing something in a certain way, I would look for those gaps. I would retrain them on those parts. Every training should have a test. Every training should have watch people doing something to make sure they can do it. Once we actually know that they can do it, if they don't do it, more training is not the answer. There's a difference between skill and will, but actually I call will won't, because if someone has the skill and they won't do something, then we have to think about why. We might give them some coaching on a specific, if there's a specific difficulty. Like I was telling Dr. Nicole, at a certain point I went and I worked in an organization in which there was a lot of filing that had to be done in alphanumeric order. But I'd never done that before, and I found in my 40s that actually I couldn't do it. I didn't know. Sometimes people have a learning disability. Sometimes people, have weaknesses in something. We can use some coaching and help them through that. But if somebody absolutely just refuses to do something, I need you to go back to your HR handbook. Look at what that particular standard is in the handbook. Oh, if you call in or you don't call in and you don't show up, or you call in this many times and according to our handbook, you have this many times, here's the consequence, because this doesn't go with our values, because if you don't call in and you don't show up, that's not integrity, right? And here's the consequences. And unfortunately, it may be unpleasant for you, but you have to actually follow the consequences. That is what the person signed up for. If they turn up late every day, you need to make sure that written in their employment contract is what are the hours of their job.
Yeah.
And then when they don't turn up, you show them on the written paper, this is the hours of your job. If you don't turn up on time again, here's the consequence of what's going to happen. And then you have to follow through with the consequence, because that's not integrity in the person. And I have a kindness foundation, right? I have a global foundation for kindness as well as doing all this work. If you don't give people that feedback and you don't use the consequences, I am going to tell you that's actually very unkind. There's a big misunderstanding between nice and kind. Oftentimes we just let things slip away. It's easier for us. We think, oh, it's nice. We don't want someone to be upset. We don't want someone to cry, right?
No.
Actually, if we don't actually say, this is what you signed up for, this is what we've now put time and effort, we've helped you do this, it's unkind, because it's disrespectful and unkind, because we're not actually believing that someone can do what they said that they were going to do. I actually believe that about all people. I believe all people can improve and learn and grow, right? So we have to, as leaders, again, be willing to follow through.
Okay.
One more thing, as I always say to people, there's a spectrum of what motivates people. Some people are motivated by a promise of a reward. People are more motivated by making sure that they don't get a punishment, right? Avoidance of a negative consequence.
Yes.
We have to figure out, for the people who work for us, where do they fall on that spectrum? And then act accordingly, because if you're only offering a reward, but someone actually, their motivation is to avoid a punishment, the reward is not going to get the behavior you want. Actually saying, hey, we're going to dock your pay for 15 minutes if that's legal in your state, right? for every minute you're late, for every time, if you're late a minute, the law says we can dock your pay 15 minutes. If you don't do that, and that person is motivated by avoiding punishment, nothing is going to change.
Okay, so we're getting into the second part here, which I was going to ask about, which is sustaining the dream team, right? We talked a little bit about the hiring and the intention of hiring. Now let's talk about, and you've hit the nail on the head, which is pretty much idle or empty threats are exactly that, and they're completely detrimental to your organization.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe I took a bigger leap there, but I get it, you know, and I see that a lot of time with parents, you know, like, well, if you don't clean up, I'm gonna, you know, take away your thing for a month. And I'm like, you're not gonna do that. Why do you say that? You know, and believe me, I'm not the greatest parent on the planet, but I do know that you can't just blow smoke. People see right through that, you know, in a heartbeat. So anyway, so let's go on talk about the sustaining portion.
Okay, so in the sustaining portion, what I teach people is that often we focus on people as a problem. But actually what we need to focus on is processes and systems. So again, if someone is late every single day, and in our handbook it says, this is not acceptable, here's the value it goes with, here's the behavior, we need you to be on time. If you don't show up on time, or if you don't show up 5 minutes before, right, and we pay you for showing 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before, this is what's going to happen. And then the person doesn't do it, and we say, oh, this person is terrible, blah, 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 on and on, they don't care. But actually, we have a system that we're not enforcing. So there is actually, the person is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, but as leaders, we are not doing what we are supposed to be.
Yeah,
neither are we. I was going to say that, neither are we.
One layer to that though, Sunny, where I've been challenged and where I'm trying to have Karyn help me is, like, I had an office manager, for instance, where people were clocking in at the wrong times, unnecessary overtime, clocking out early, days off that I never approved. There's no time off request. She was not enforcing that at all. So then the accountability tree shouldn't come to me as the owner always saying, hey, what's up with this? Hey, why are we not doing that? And I think at times they're doing it because they're also not clocking in at the right time. They're clocking in late. So then they're letting it slide with another employee because they're not upholding the standard themselves.
Well, you can't just do as I say. You got to do as I do.
Exactly.
Right. But the problem is I do as I do, but I need the managers or the
Well, absolutely. If that's your highest
do.
up, I would think that's your primary.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
One of the things that I do is I do a 12-week manager training class, right? And often, here's the thing, we promote people to management positions. Oh, they were a great assistant, right?
Computer principal, yeah.
They did their job fabulous. They're responsible, they embody all these values. Now they're going to be a manager. And we're like, congratulations, here's your promotion, here's your raise. The person's like super excited, and we give them zero help to understand how to be a manager. Most people think that managers, the job of a manager is to put out a fire. That managers are firefighters. That when there's a problem, the manager runs over and they put out the fire. And actually, when people do that, you know, we get a lot of adrenaline, you get a lot of cortisol. Those are addictive hormones. You feel great. Everyone's like, oh my goodness, you put out the fire. Now we've rewarded someone for something, and a reward is the end of the habit cycle. Manager's job is to prevent fires from starting and making sure that people are following the standards for the practice, doing what they are supposed to do when they are supposed to do it, so that fires don't start. But we do not teach people how to do that. And then we reward them when they've put out fires, and we create a horrible, vicious cycle. One of the things I absolutely love about working with dentists is you all have systems, you all have standards, you have written documentation, you have data sheets. Many other kinds of organizations do not have any of that. Managers need to be the people who are making sure that team members are following all of those. That's the target. And when they're not following them, figure out why and fix the problem. Sometimes it requires more training, sometimes it requires coaching, and sometimes it requires an HR intervention. We want to have still waters. We don't want fires. Fires are bad for patients. They're bad for the organization. They're bad for you. Because then, Dr. Nicole, if there's a fire, what are you doing? In the end, you're the person who has to put it out many times, right?
Yeah, most often. And then, you know, there was a question they asked in one of my leadership things, is, are you a fire fighter or a fire starter? And I think for a lot of our offices, we have a fire starter in the office, someone who can initiate conflict or who can end up in some ways having accountability conversations that pit people against one another or pit people against the doctor. Well, oh, doctor is so mean for making me hold you accountable to this.
They are
And
starting drama, right?
yes, right. So fire starter. And I think that's something that's not individual just to my practice. It's something that most people suffer from. And I think that's also why people have this common saying, at least Karyn, in a lot of our forums, which is that there's no such thing as an office manager, because ultimately it still ends up on the doctor's plate to put out all these fires, to handle all the systems, to handle all the issues. How do you?
I guarantee you send people to me for 12 weeks of training, you will have a manager. The problem is that we didn't teach someone how to manage the process.
Yes.
We taught someone if you're a manager and somebody does something wrong, it's the person there's something wrong with the person in general. And I know it often doesn't feel like this. And I've done this for years and years and years. In general, 95% of people come to work and they actually want to do what's expected of them. They want to be they work because, of course, yes, they want money, but they want to be part of something larger than they can do on themselves. They want to be part of that vision. They want to contribute positively. But when something goes wrong, and the manager says, well, you're a terrible person, or the doctor's a terrible person, or this and that, we're actually focused on the wrong thing. When something goes wrong, something broke down in the standard. I'm going to give you a simple tip how anybody can tell when this is a problem. If you have a team member who goes to your office manager or comes to you and starts their sentence with the name of another team member and says, this is like children tattling, right? So-and-so did this, or so-and-so didn't do what they were supposed to do, I would say, time out. Stop this conversation right now. We don't start sentences with the name of another person unless we're giving them a compliment.
Okay.
I want you to tell me what process didn't occur properly here. Oh, I don't have this particular supply that I need. Great, so there's a problem in the supply ordering process. Let's figure out where that broke down, right? Of course, the supplies may be ordered by people, but again, maybe it's a new person who doesn't understand. Maybe it's a person who happened to be away on the day and the person who was supposed to take over didn't take over. Something, but we didn't have a process for that. We didn't let someone else know, oh, you're supposed to do it. Maybe the supplier didn't have it and that didn't get communicated. And we don't have a process of, oh, if the supplier doesn't have it, is there another supplier we can use? Is there an alternate product we could use? Oftentimes we find either when those things happen that we didn't have a standard to start with, or for some reason the person didn't follow the standard. Now we have to figure out why. But if we stop blaming people and we start asking them to look at the process, now we're going to actually maintain our dream team, because we're going to stop the drama. Gossip, drama, God, no, doesn't belong anywhere, right? But managers don't understand that that's their job. To
So
say
you
to
don't
people,
you don't use the snitches get stitches then, huh? That's not your line.
my life. And I just want you to think about this from your own home life. When a process goes smoothly, okay, when the dishwasher is loaded and turned on, emptied, and dishes are put away, so everybody has the dishes that they want, and they can put their dirty dishes into the dishwasher and not leave them piled in a disgusting mess in the sink. Everybody gets along with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
When that process breaks down, I can guarantee you we got arguing, we got finger pointing, but it wasn't my job, it wasn't my job. Did we have a written standard for how this process runs? The wonderful thing in dentistry is you usually do. And we just got to find out, here's the process, why wasn't it followed? Oh, actually, but we didn't actually have this part of the process. We don't have what's the standard of who's the alternate if somebody happens to be away because they were sick or their child was sick, because we're family, and if your child is sick, you get to stay home. Like whatever that is, we've made that decision. If we have a missing standard, you know who creates that? The office manager or the manager of, if you have a much larger practice, you know, many people have different kinds of managers. That's created, that's trained. We go to see to make sure people understand and they can do it. And then we solve the problem without blaming people.
Mm-hmm.
I love the
And how
Canadian
do you,
accent, by the way.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
the Canadian accent. I just gotta, it went on a few times. I said, I gotta say something about it. Anyway, go ahead, Nicole.
Well, I was just going to say, how do you do your 12-week program, and does the manager training? So you just finished it with a practice that has 50 employees and 6 doctors, multi-million-dollar practice. How do you do it?
For managers, right? I'm actually going to run an open session of this starting at the end of August. And basically, it's 2 sessions a week. One at the beginning of the week in which we have theory, and then everybody has an assignment. And it's really simple. Basically, starts with leadership, understanding what the values are. How do you actually train people? How do you coach people? How do you know when? Many managers I work with, and I ask them to tell me, even the HR manager, I'm like, okay, what's your policy for people being late? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, but you're the HR manager. You need to have this memorized. Right?
Yeah.
And we go through 12 weeks. The homework is assigned on the first meeting of the week. And then when we come back, we discuss everybody. How did you do at your homework? Tell me what the problems were. What was the thing? And we just go through 12 steps to become a better manager and to focus, to understand what a target is in the specific language that I use, what a standard is, how you actually stop being a firefighter and learn how to control the process. Many people who we promote to managers, they don't know what to do when somebody, there's 2 weeks on how do you deal with really difficult situations and what we would call difficult people. We promote people to managers. Did we teach them how to do that? How to actually sit down and have a kind conversation in which you really have to tell the person, okay, here was the target. Here's the actual based on the work you did. There's a big gap here. What are we going to do? Most people know how to do that in a way that actually doesn't denigrate someone or doesn't say to someone, you're a terrible person because you did that. We don't teach people that. So we set managers up for failure because they don't know how to do that, but that's not kind. And everything has to come back to your values, and everything has to come back to your mission and the behaviors that you want to see, because your managers have to be looking for those things. So if you can't articulate those, what you want to see, what you don't want to see. If you see something you don't want to see, what do you want to replace it with? we have to be able to be as specific as we can with our managers so that our managers can learn. So by the end of 12 weeks, I can guarantee you, a manager knows how to manage processes so that people are successful. How we get there is just as or more important than where we're going.
How do you do it
Cool.
through team leads as well? Like a team, especially for a smaller team, like if you're the head assistant and you're leading one or two other assistants, and then you're the lead front desk where you're leading the recare coordinator and you're in charge of doctor's schedule, and you have to work together so that the new patient exam isn't conflicting with 2 hygiene checks, conflicting with fillings, conflicting with the production goal. Like, do you also implement that for the different team leads?
Yes.
Or is it just for managers?
Oh, team leads can come to manager training. They're going to use the same things. Also, I am going to say that there are many different things that when I work with dental offices, we can look at how things are scheduled in Dentrix and the different kind of things you do and see, okay, are we using templates properly? Are we scheduling patients properly so that we actually have, again, effective and efficient. Effective means do it right the first time. That's the only way to be efficient. If we're effective and we get everything done right, it's scheduled right, people come, the right things happen, we're going to be extremely efficient, right? So I also work directly with dental offices to make sure that those things are happening. Everyone is different. Everybody needs, there's no cookie cutter solution. The solution is what the problem you're having in your office is, what your vision is, your values are, how we're going to apply these principles and get you to be where you want to be.
Okay, 2 more questions. Nicole, I'm going to let you run with it. Go ahead.
Well, I actually want to ask one of you, Dr. Spera, how do you do
That
this
wasn't
with
fair.
multiple
I set myself up. What?
with multiple practices? Like, do you have a manager for each practice? Do you have a different manager for a certain area? Like, this manager does these 3 offices and then the other ones report into her. Do you have a true assistant office manager for all the offices, or is it in each office in specific, a hygiene lead? How do you have yours set up? And how did you train on that?
Each office has a manager position. We have one office that manager position is not filled presently. We have a overall operations director or operations manager, and her job is to work with and through the office managers to make sure that they're supported and they are consistent with our values and cores and behaviors and, et cetera, and helps them, train to do some of those things. Some of them have been in the position for a bit. I don't know if they fully grasp it. Like, I think Karyn hit the nail on the head. Your person rises to the level of their ineptitude sometimes. And I think we try to make sure that we respect that and give them some training tools and some education and then to reinforce them and to sit back and let them, give them the rope and let them run with it and support them. So that's how we do it. We've tried various other bastardized versions of that, but that's where we've landed, and I think it works the best for us.
So if you have a new team lead, assistant lead in the back, and you have like a tag ordering system, who teaches them that?
Okay, all right. So now we're talking about ordering supplies. So each office has a person that's their response. Now, maybe the lead assistant, it may not be, depending on there's things. I think it happens to be right now that lead assistant is doing it. So how do we do that? We have a sort of a clinical director. I'm not sure her title off the top of my head. I think it's director of the clinics, and she works with the team leads. So she helps them train and learn the various roles and then tries to relate, like Karyn talks about, how that interrelates with the other parts. So for example, if I'm working in office A, I want to make sure I have calcium hydroxide in office A, not just office B, because they didn't order it. or I don't want to be low on a certain thing, but I also don't want to be oversupplied on another thing. So inventory control is something that we haven't really jumped at yet but we know that we need to address it, but we got to get those people in those roles comfortable and trained, because we have a fairly new operations manager, and working with her to implement and drive some of those things in. So I hate to say it, but there's layers of red tape, I guess, or layers of management, but I think it allows us to, at a local level, have direct contact, direct feedback, and then have a little bit of advice and supervision from the top that allows them to thrive, you know? So that's our goal.
In your office, do they go to the doctor or to the manager?
For what?
Not just for an issue, like we're out of this, or we had so-and-so was late, or we're going to be understaffed, or
completely different things then. Okay, so
yeah,
let's talk about a specific. So if it's a supply, they shouldn't come to me with it. They should not come to the doctor and say, we're out of this. They should know what to do to get it. Okay.
I agree, but I have this challenge in my office.
Yeah. So no, that shouldn't have to come to me. And there are times where I'm like, how are we down to one SX file? Like, how did that happen? Oh, okay. Well, please, let's not let this happen. The next question you said was, if a person's late, that's the office manager. And then the office manager should be keeping track of the time. And then if they're unsure of what to do, then that's where our operations manager should be able to help them.
Correct. So like for me, this employee now calling out for tomorrow, she just texted the office manager, but then the office manager did not then say, are you calling a temp or should I? Or this is handled. It was just, oh, here's a heads up, a screenshot of this text message, which then puts it then back on my plate. For me to then say, which I don't think is managing.
No, that's not. That's just being a filter, really. Right? That's being a backboard. Some things bounce off, some things kind of sit and go in, I would guess my answer would be, what would you want her to do? Like what are the processes that you would do given that issue? Yeah.
So when we're talking about clear communication, to me, it would say, hey, heads up, this person just called in for Monday. We are not set yet or are we set yet for Friday? Like, did you set up everything for the day? The schedule looks busy. I'm going to go ahead and call the temp agency right now.
So
that's the closed loop.
Right. And that's the guidance I want you now to give the office manager, because now we have a great example. Here's what happened. The target is next time, this is what needs to happen. Right? Exactly those things. So
right, because if you do it, then she'll never do it. Right?
Which is what ends up happening. I end up saying, where are our 30, 60, 90-day reviews? Did they fill out the paperwork? How come they didn't fill this out? We can't have our 30, 60, 90 review without the 60-day metrics paperwork filled out. When did you give it to them? When did they give it back? Well, like I end up managing too many of the steps of the process, which should not be my role.
Nope. You should be overseeing your manager, and your manager should have the ability to do all those things. My guess is they don't understand all those different things. That's my guess.
Correct. But that boils down to each department too, like the hygienists who are like, oh, well, we've been out of this product. We thought you knew. And I'm like, the hygienists are supposed to do their own ordering sheets and give them to the back office lead. So we have all these little systems that fall off one by one and then end up being dumped on my plate, which makes me feel that I'm failing as a leader and a manager, because I shouldn't have to do all those when I already have a system in place for it that no one's checking in and following up on. And then we end up on this cycle.
So my guess is, this is just a guess, there's an unclear, right, expectation and unclear consequences of inaction. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Right. And once they're clear, if we continue again, we train someone, we train them a second time, because that's fair. Once we can see that they can do it, we know they understand, right? Once we know they understand, and they don't do it, we've now transferred from needs more training, doesn't understand, right? Because oftentimes we just think people don't understand. Once we're sure they do understand, training twice, that's it. Then we actually need to go to this is now no longer a skill problem, it's a will or won't problem. And what do we do in the won't problem, right? Because again, as I always say, in my house, we never gave children, we never counted to 3. When I ask you to do something once, my expectation is that you're going to do it.
Well,
Otherwise,
and then,
have 2
yeah.
times people can say, no, I don't want to do it, right? Then they just learn. Why would I do it the first time? I gotta, 3 is good.
That was a difference in parenting styles. My wife and I. My wife would come in and she'd say, turn the TV off, and they wouldn't bat an eyelash because they knew she had levels, and they would take her to the 10th level all the time. Where I would go in and say, listen, I need you guys to turn the TV off. We got to do this. And they didn't do it. And then I would walk in and shut the TV off, say, TV's off for the day. And then they would do it. And then so it was like, okay, well, dad does this and mom does that. So, and she would make fun of me, but she was like, how do you do that? I said, it's just simple. It's very simple. Here's what it is. If you don't do it, it's okay. Here's the consequence. And that's what we go to.
Exactly. And it is not unkind to actually use the consequence. It's
Right.
very kind. It's kind because people, cause and effect is like really simple. And people ask me all the time, well, why will people push the boundaries? Why will they do all that? Because they're human beings.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's just simply it. There's no
Human
other
nature.
answer. They're human. Nobody is perfect. And we can be kind and compassionate. We can understand that all different things happen to people. But in the end, when you come to work for someone and you're being paid to work for that person, we need to hold people to the standard that we expect of them, and that when they signed their employment contract, they agreed to.
Mhm.
Right? They agreed to that.
Right. Okay. Last question, Nicole.
Well, for me though, I'm having an issue with a perception difference of completing tasks, right? So I'll give an example. Consent forms and health history. I had a meeting on Friday with my front office lead, who she checked several people in, and in her mind, when we had a coaching and accountability conversation, it was a complete disconnect with, I did, Dr. Vane, I sent them. I'm like, correct, but they didn't fill them out. And when you check them in, you let them go to the back with no health history in 2 years. And she's like, but I sent it to him. Correct. But it wasn't done. So part of the whole process of not just, yes, check, I sent them the consent and I sent them the health history, is that when they check in, we say, hey, I noticed you have or haven't filled this out. Why don't you take a minute and fill this out? And there was truly a disconnect with, but I did that. No, you did the first part, but it wasn't completed. And I also went through some billing examples of managing billing isn't just, I sent the claim. It's, was it paid? Is it sitting in AR? Is it aging? Was it missing information? So really getting them to see the full loop picture in terms of accountability can be a real challenge. And so how do you deal with those disconnects? I think the other issue is that most doctors, I mean, I've been that doctor, had their head in the sand, and I didn't look at anything. So I didn't actually even know the problems that were occurring. So then, oh, my doctor is really chill. They never told me they had a problem with my billing. Well, a lot of them never even look at their AR. So they don't even know that it's a problem until it's a problem. Like, oh, there's no money in the bank account. Why aren't they collecting? Why is our AR so high? So how do you manage it on these small level issues that are actually big issues? I don't want my patients being brought back without any consent forms. How do you check in on those conversations? How do you do that, Dr. Spera? How do you do that, Karyn?
Well, I think the most effective way is to have the person rectify the situation, right? So like, you don't want to step in and do it for them, right?
No.
So like you mentioned checklists. Okay, you have checklists. Then there should be a checklist before the person goes back to receive treatment then, if you're going to go by a checklist, right? If we're going to break it down to that, okay, checklist, I sent that out, patient comes in, now your checklist is, as you greet them, your checklist is, are these things now completed? They're not. That's the next task that has to be done in order to go to the next step. That would be, I don't know, that would be my 5 cents worth. Karyn?
Yes, and I would add it one step further than that, because actually I love a checklist, because the truth is most people are visual learners, not auditory learners. So again, me too. Once we go back to training, we make sure that our standard training for this process includes all of the steps you want to completion, Dr. Nicole, every single one. Then we make a checklist and the person fills out the checklist. Was it sent? Was it that? When the patient comes, and they have to give that completed checklist to the office manager. In your case, that's the person they would give it to.
Yes.
Office manager has to make sure that all steps were completed. And you could have 2 different checklists. You talked about 2 different processes. If the checklist is not completed when handed in, the office manager needs to go and watch the person the next time that they're doing the process and make sure they do all the steps. Every time we do a process or we do something, we make a neural pathway. So we want things to become habits. The more times we do something correctly, the stronger that neural pathway becomes. So we want the office manager then to go back to make sure, again, the best way to be efficient is to be effective. Do it right the first time. That's what managing is. That's what they learn in manager class, team lead class, right? That our job is to help people to do the right thing as many times as possible. So you have a visual system. The person is keeping track again. The office manager is keeping track. Okay, this is how many times the person did the checklist wrong. This is how many times I corrected them. Now it's correct. These are part of the metrics that we measure people on their performance evaluation. Addition that after 30, 60, 90 days, this is how we're going to keep you. And this goes with your value, integrity. We do what we say we're going to do. So I would have a visual process.
Okay. All right.
Last question.
I mean, just how do you know at the end of 12 weeks that they are ready to be signed off and trained? How do you
set that before? So we figure out what those metrics are, what the decision point is. That person is clearly communicated that when we give them their offer letter. This is what we'll be looking for in these 12 weeks. Those things are checked off on. They're all measurable. They're all factual. They're all objective, not subjective. We saw them with our own eyes. We heard them with our own ears. Those are done. We hire you. They're not done. Guess what? We don't hire you. But the better our hiring process is to start, the more likely we are that after 12 weeks, after our 3 months, 90 days, we're going to be good.
Okay. Yeah. There'd be a whole nother conversation on how to hire associates that are, or specialists that are aligned with your values as well. I myself have had issues with that, where we're very much aligned with what our priorities for patient care are and how we treatment plan. So there's a lack of cohesion there, which would be a whole nother great subject, right, Dr. Spera?
Yep, and a whole other episode. And I also just want to say before we hang up, I really, really loved working with Dr. Nicole. And it's really been a pleasure because she is so not only serious about the high level of patient care, but really about improving herself and working on her own leadership, because the only person you can really change is yourself, right? You can work on yourself, you can become better, you can learn new things, which you can then teach to other people, but it's always going to start with improving yourself. So Dr. Nicole, I super, super love working with you. And I thank you for introducing me to Dr. Sunny to be on this podcast.
I will
I
say
just-
that I will say one thing on that subject. I think Nicole is a tireless and relentless pursuer of perfection, personally, professionally, etc. So I second that.
It is exhausting though for me. I've become very fatigued in this journey of trying to create the dream team. So I'm grateful for the support, Dr. Spera, of colleagues like you and mentors, but also of finding people like Karyn that are going to help me tie these pieces of the puzzle together, because we do have different weaknesses. And at the end of the day, our business should be able to run without us, where we are just doing the dentistry and not doing all of these levels of business ownership. And for me, getting fatigued on that, I really need to fix this portion for me to have another 20 something years in my career, because I love dentistry. I just don't love management.
Well, it's funny. I read this quote and it came up. I as you were talking, both Nicole and Karyn, there was a quote running through my head that was similar, I think, to the gist of some of the things you said. When I talk to managers, I get the feeling that they are important. When I talk to leaders, I get the feeling that I am important. So it kind of hit me. I read it, and then as you guys were speaking, I was like, oh, I took a second and looked down. I was trying to find it, but that was the quote. So
that is a great quote. And I want to remind people, we need leadership. We need management. We need team members. In order for everything to work, we need every level of people doing their job, every level of people understanding what their role in realizing that mission vision through the values, right? Because we're all interconnected. Everybody has an important role to play, and they have to do their role. And when they do, guess what? We're all successful.
And it's not unkind. Yeah. It's not unkind. To have standards and hold people to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was the biggest message I took away. So anyway, thank you both for being on. I want you to hang on for a second, because we'll book that. Let's book part 2 right after this. Was very helpful. Okay, well, Doc, thank you very much, Karyn, for being with us. Karyn Ross. I'll put her information in the show notes. And as always, love you, Nicole. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being you, unapologetically you. I love you for it. And thanks everybody for listening. Hope it was worth your time and effort. I know it was for me. So have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee for service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee for Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.